So again, I draw your attention to the new banners, July's theme, open communication. I came across a blog this week. The title drew me in, and it said, "How to Stop Being Offended." So I had to read that one. And it was a brilliant piece because it reminded me in all of its simplicity of the ancient understanding, the ancient wisdom that surrounds communication in and of itself, and that anytime we meet people, we're not meeting people where they are in this present moment, surface, hello, how are you? What we are doing every time there is an energy exchange is that we are meeting all of their shame. We are meeting all of their disappointment. We are meeting all of the domestication and the background of their family dynamic. We are meeting their divorces. We are meeting their disappointments. We are meeting their hostilities. We're meeting their inflammation, their inflammatory nature. We're meeting their pain. We're meeting the fact that in the inner recesses of their mind that they have shame around the way in which they raised their children. We are meeting all of the things that people are not willing to own up to in a state of vulnerability because they are afraid of what other people will think of them. That's what we're meeting. Every single time I shake somebody's hand, I'm not just shaking their hand and it's happening right here in this particular interchange, but we're meeting a collective of everything, both the DNA and spiritually, that exists and resides within the minds of those individuals. So, knowing that, can you consider the fact that whatever then is projected back to you in that interchange, if it's not something that you particularly like, or if it's not something that feeds you personally, that you understand that it has nothing to do with you? That true open communication is a simple humbling of the heart, whereby we see people and we understand that what is presented to us in this particular skin suit has a history. And that history really doesn't have very much to do with us. It just so happens that we are like pinballs in a pinball machine that are going back and forth and meeting and interspersing with so many people that it becomes an opportunity for us to establish one central idea, and that is, in every encounter, our only singular job is to love. So when you're standing there in a checkout line with a cashier who really doesn't seem to care about you, it has nothing to do with you. That cashier is working at a job that can barely pay the gas money to get them there. They don't wake up in the morning and go, "Yay, I get to be a cashier," unless they have come to the wise realization that wherever they go and however they serve, they do so from that radiance. But most people in our world today are heavily veiled in the illusion of disparity and wondering what to do. In the Bible, it says that a house divided cannot stand. And when we look at the celebration of this weekend and what it represents for us as the United States of America, we realize that the United States of America is a house that is divided. And the house cannot stand. And this is going to sound a little bit odd, but the house actually needs to fall down. Because you can't keep patching things. Just as I would say to you, you can't keep attempting or approaching spirituality on the surface and creating these little patchwork fixes every time you feel out of sorts. But that what has to happen is a demolition of an idea of separation to begin with. Perhaps you don't even know this or remember this, but we have a theme as a nation. It was brought to us by our founding fathers, who, by the way, were not perfect at all, so don't even put them on a pedestal. But I'll get to that later. But they established a theme, and it was E pluribus unum. Anybody want to guess what E pluribus unum means? Yeah, well, the Latin, that might be the Aramaic translation, but the Latin translation is out of many, one. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. If you take coins out of your pocket, you look on the back of all of our currency, it says E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. So what does that mean? That means that from the get-go of the founding of our nation, that we created invitational energy for multiculturalism. From the get-go. And so if you look at the timeline from the founding fathers and the signing of the Declaration, and you start to see the influx of the varying subsets of the immigration that began to happen, all of these subsets and all of these religions and all of these cultures and all of these traditions began to infiltrate, creating what is considered to be one of the greatest melting pots in the world. And yet, instead of revering that and honoring that, what has begun to happen is that there has been a disparagement between those who might be classified as rich and those who might be classified as poor. And there doesn't really seem to be much of a middle class anymore. And so as we begin to look at this idea that a house divided cannot stand against itself, then the first thing that we, and I'm going to call you a light worker, the thing that you as a light worker are obligated to do is to allow it to fall, to welcome it to fall, because it means that we no longer position ourselves as this, us and them, right and wrong, but we allow the illusion of itself to fall so that we can begin to reconstruct, to rebuild, to facilitate something that more in alignment with what that theme was all about. Out of many, one. And the way in which that begins to happen is a reconciliation with internal power. So when you hear the word indigenous, what do you think of? Native, right? And so you have a native power, you have an indigenous power that resides within you. Now, you get to do whatever you want to with that power. You can deny it, you can veil it, you can ignore it, or you can simply be unconscious to it. But at some point, you will create a vector. In other words, you will create an intersection where you will be aware of the fact that you have an indigenous power within you. That power, which is the power of creation, call it God, call it intelligence, call it source, is undeniable. It is native. It is inherent to you. And so that which was the divine idea of this country was birthed from a divine discontent of oppression. And things work in cycles. And so when we get another upsweep of oppression, then some indigenous power takes over. And suddenly there is the abolishment of slavery. But just because there is the abolishment of slavery does not change some of the mindset within the individuals. And so then there becomes another upheaval and another upswirl, and we are at the precipice of that. And it is inherent, it is imperative, it is the utmost importance that you understand that what you possess is indigenous power. Now, you and I are not indigenous power solely, but we are then the other kind of power, which is surrogate power. When you hear the word surrogate, what do you think? A substitute. So we are this vessel or this substitute for that which is indigenous power. And as we begin to uphold this, we realize that we have a tremendous responsibility as surrogates of indigenous power. And ours is one singular task, and that is to love. That when you greet these people, you understand that as you greet them, you are greeting their history. That we don't become so full of ourselves that we think that every attack has something to do with us personally. It is the ignorance of the forgottenness of the indigenous power of generations of people. And I don't stand here this morning to profess to tell you how to immediately resolve that. But I will tell you what is ours to do right now in this moment. And it is to restore old-fashioned kindness. That whole thing of love thy neighbor. Of waking up in the immediacy of our morning in spiritual practice and understanding that if I am to be an effective light worker on this planet, then I must have a ritual. And that ritual must be a morning prayer that sounds something like this. Oh, Indigenous Power, use me. Use me. Correct my missteps. Bring to me the clarity that is already in existence. Guide me. When I am lost, restore me. And show me what it is that is mine to do. What is mine to do. And what is yours to do will then be presented to you. And what is yours to do, and yours to do, and yours to do, and yours to do, will not be a carbon copy. But it will be wherever you are in the world that you approach all of those particular things with deep reverence and kindness. You know what was so amazing about standing around Jack's bed yesterday with all of these amazing women was to listen to the stories that they had to tell about Jack. And the fact that there had been decades of love. And one of the women remarked, "Oh, I'm so sad that Jack never found that one person." And the other woman just kind of hit her, and she said, "What do you mean? He found all of us. He had more than one person." And there was just such a sweetness to that. And the fact that each of these women dropped their responsibilities, and they came from Seattle, they came from San Antonio, they came from Tampa. His sister Jill was there, and they have been with him all week long. That's an act of love. It's an act of love that all of us can hope for, but perhaps it won't happen. You might meet someone today who won't have the luxury of that type of social circle of love, and yet you have the opportunity to extend love in this moment and to remind them that it's prevalent and that it's there. There are people who walk on this planet who aren't as brilliant and light and funny and charming as Jack is. So for Jack, love was easy. Perhaps it's not easy for you. But it doesn't mean that it's not available. And so the call that exists within the soul is not a mental call. It is a heart call. And I never want you to confuse the name of this teaching, the science of mind and the use of mind, and consider that the heart doesn't have anything to do with it, because the heart is the engine. The heart is the propulsion. The heart is the fuel. Native Americans teach that there is a thing called the sacred heart. The sacred heart is not the physical organ or the heart, but it's a portal that actually exists energetically behind the physical heart, in between that and the spine. And that as one becomes more and more enlightened, that portal begins to open, and it begins to affect all of us physiologically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And that portal can only be activated through the action of love. And so the saying goes that if you want more love in your life, then love more. If you want friends in your life, be a friend. If you want convenience in your life, then sometimes love isn't convenient. Love is messy. Love is vulnerable. Love requires the dissolution, the breakdown, the house divided to collapse. Because unless all of that energy within the walls and the flooring and all of the things that comprise the house, if all of that doesn't get just wiped out and started over, then the energy and the residue of that is still there when I go to greet people. And so open communication asks of us daily, to put this into practice. What happens with surrogate power is when it is separated from indigenous power, then it becomes all about the ego. And the powers that we see working in the world that promote separation are surrogate power that feels that it's an entity in and of itself. I have created this. And it comes with corruption, it comes with lying, it comes with manipulation, it comes with threats, and it's worldwide. But I want you to know that as we finger point and cast blame at surrogate power, we have to be aware of the fact that we too have misused that. We are not 100% pure surrogates. Because every single time that I want to cast blame, or every single time I take something personally, I am forgetting that ancient, wise understanding that what I am greeting is a history, is a tapestry of that person's entire life. Do you think you have the capability to greet people from that perspective? Do you think you have the capability to love and extend that kind of love in a way that requires you to let go of what other people think about you, to let go of your particular positions in the world, and to just simply be, to be in service, to be willing to humble yourself every single moment in a world that has forgotten how to do that? All that it takes is willingness. And you may think that you are not enough. You may think, what's the point? No one sees what I do anyway. No one cares what I do anyway. And I would just like to correct you on that. Before the Berlin Wall came down, it was revealed that there were small pockets of individuals that had gotten together for years, that had sat in meditation and quiet and had prayed and visualized peace over and over and over again. Can you imagine if all of those pockets of individuals had said, why are we doing this? The wall's there, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change. But they didn't pay attention to that. They just naturally, in the pure surrogate energy, allowed that which is the indigenous power to bring them together. Perhaps they didn't even know why, but they sat in contemplation and visualized peace. And something undeniable happens then when the purity of that infiltrates us as surrogates, because then things do change. The house divided does fall. And a whole new system of belief and being takes place. And so the time for talking about things is over. And what is before us is the embracing of out of many one. So I don't know if you have an answer for you, but my bigger question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Meaning, what are we going to do about the division that is present? How are we going to let the house fall? But in doing that, not despair, but to celebrate in the quietness and the pocket and the collective of of our people, those who are like-minded, to begin to visualize and understand a greater sense of responsibility of what we are called to be. It's time we communicate at that level. It's time we operate at that level. It's time we allow anything that is small and anything that is personal and anything that is ego-driven to be set aside and to begin to look at people. In fact, I want to encourage you to let that be your experiment. That as you go out into the world, you don't just kind of half attention see people or exchange with them, but really look at people. And when you look at them, ask yourself, what is the history here? And realize that whatever retaliation, whatever non-committal response that you're getting has nothing to do with you. And the more that we can begin to accept that, the more that we can begin to change and fuel the energy of us as surrogates of this indigenous power and begin to practice deeply loving. Sometimes they say, you only go around once. Well, what we know, if you believe like me, you go around a lot. And what you don't get this time, you're just going to keep repeating. You like that little country, keep repeating. But you have been put in this space-time continuum for a reason. And I would ask that you don't waste that. We went to the beach last week, and I had it in my mind that we were going to take our dogs because my oldest dog, Scout, he too is on his last go around. And so, he's 15. He's a golden retriever. He's a Katrina rescue, and he's had a really great time since that hurricane, and since I found him. But as I was walking him around, I sort of over-navigated, and we didn't quite make it back, and he just collapsed in somebody's yard. And so I kind of sat with him in the yard, and I just waited till he was ready to try to stand up again. And I realized that people are collapsing, and no one's stopping, and no one's sitting with them. And it's time that we love at that level. And there's nothing like being with someone as they're taking their last breaths to remind us of what is ours to do. And so I stand before you once again to remind you of what is ours to do. We are a multicultural America that is rich in its diversity, rich in heritage. And it begs for us to not only appreciate that, but to honor it, to sit with those people, to be with them, to love them, to navigate and to advocate for them in whatever way that you can. If you really want to honor our country, then let us begin to honor those people. Every single person. Even when it's not convenient. Because that, my friend, is the true foundation of what our purpose is. That is the indigenous power that screams and begs for our attention to be used through us as surrogates. May we be faithful to that. May we honor that. So it is.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.